Okay, let's talk Sprite Kit. If you've never used Sprite Kit before, this is a great tutorial to learn a little bit about kind of laying out things. And what am I showing you right here? Let's go over here to a new project, and I'll get you up to speed with where I'm at. Click on Game. Okay, so this is just an iOS application. Next, you want language to be Swift, Sprite Kit, put in your product name, and then I'm just going to cancel that out because I've already got this just a blank Sprite Kit project already open over here. And in the gamescene.swift file, I've stripped out pretty much all the code other than the update statement and this did move to view over here. So let's talk about how you're going to lay things out. If you're used to using Interface Builder or just programming in kind of your own ways of laying things out, this video is going to come in handy. And let's knock out one thing right away. You're going to get two different numbers here when you print out the self.frame value and the self.view.frame value. And a lot of times if you're kind of Googling stuff like, well, how do I get the, the width and the height and everything like that, you'll stumble onto this over here before you stumble onto this, at least in my experience. And I'm just building this right now with the iPhone 8 Plus. I just want to show you in the output window the results that you get for that. So here we go. Self.frame gives us, and let's ignore the first two numbers in here. These are X and Y values, okay? Let's just look at the width, okay? So there's the width, height, and height, okay? So the self.frame is actually going to be the scene or your .SKS file over here. Now keep in mind, self in this case refers to our SKScene, okay? And if you were to jump over here to your scene editor file, your SKS file, you're going to see that these values match. 750 for the width, 1334 for the height, and then you've got this might seem a little confusing at first, but what's going on here is the anchor point for this scene is 0.5 and 0.5, which means that the center point, okay, right there, is just basically dead center in between these values or whatever. So if you were to go over to here, right, at around this point, that's going to be negative 375, okay? And then over here is 375, right? So exactly, half and half of 750, and of course the same thing is going to be true along the y-axis, okay? I tend to always leave the anchor point at this default value. I've just gotten kind of used to working at it like that. But you can change it if you want to. So you could put this at like 0, 0. And then in this case, now your kind of your y-axis is down here at the bottom, and your x starting point is over here on the side. You know what? I mean, for like a side scroller game, it might make a little bit more sense to do something like this, where you've got 0.5 now in the middle, for the X, but then the Y is down there at the bottom. So at least then you would kind of know, oh, okay, well, I guess my ground plane is more, focused on the 0 being at the bottom. But again, it's, that's something you're going to kind of figure out on your own. But anyway, that explains that, right? So kind of what you want to avoid is using this self.view.frame. And the reason being, is if you try to put in some code in here that said, okay, let's suppose your ship goes outside of the viewable area, and you want it to, go Pac-Man style and come back around on the other side of that, you're going to want to use these values over here, or really kind of these values, to do the position testing on something like that. Otherwise, if you try to use these, well, look at this. Let's say half of this 212, right? So if the ship was started here and went out to 212, that's more like right about there. So, then it would disappear and come back over this way. Okay. So self.frame. Now, yeah, the temptation, I guess, for a lot of programmers coming from a non-Sprite Kit based technology is that you code in a lot of your layout, right? But you don't actually have to do that. I mean, we have these layout files here for a reason. So you can, drag out these elements from over here, set up your GUI and stuff like that, however you want. Of course, you're going to texture these things, whatever it is. But, as iOS developers, we've always kind of got that issue of coexisting with the other devices, right? And you can see that this basically the Sprite Kit, this template file is kind of looks more like an iPhone type shape than it does an iPad, right? So what do you do in a case like that, you know? And that's one of the things we're going to talk most about today. So let me just go ahead and delete that. And the kind of file that got the party started here is actually our game view controller. So if we switch over to this, you'll see this chunk of code here, which basically presents our actual scene. All right, so it's creating this scene variable. It's an SKScene type, and it's using a file named GameScene, and that's what this is over here. Okay, so when you see GameScene, right, it's not referring to the .swift file over here, right? It's actually referring to this .sks file. And what you can do is you can change that file based on the device that you're using. So that is exactly what we're going to want to do. And I just go ahead and go over here to File and then Duplicate and create a different one. So we'll put it in Pad. Okay. And if you wanted, you could also duplicate that again. And let's change the name to being TV. All right. And while we're in these files, let's go ahead and just change the text on the label to being TV. Change this over here to being iPad. Oop, don't want to do that. Lowercase I. And then, you know, for this, you could put phone or universal. I mean, you know, because you could always have basically a file that shows up if there's, or a scene file that is presented if there's not an alternate version specifically for that device. So go ahead and save those out, and then let's switch back over here to our game view controller, and we're going to turn this into being a variable right here. So let's think about that. We're going to put var. I'm going to write this variable, let's call it full SKS name. This will be a string type. And then what we'll do is basically just use this as the base name. Okay, so I'm going to copy that and now swap that out right over there. Okay, and then what we want to do between this point and this point is test to see if there is an alternate version with that suffix, either pad or TV. Okay, and this is pretty simple. We'll just put in here if UI device .current user interface idiom. Let's go and test for the TV first. So we'll put if that equals .tv. Now here's where we get to be a little tricky. We're going to say if let and do an underscore right here. Now normally we'd have a variable name, okay, but we're not going to actually use the variable that we're setting up here. What we're just going to do is test to see if this file exists. So we're going to say GameScene. Okay, so now that's the class, right? Of course, we already have that in here, GameScene.swift. File named, and then what you can do is, and actually let's do this. Let's come up with a base name. So we're going to say var base SKS name. It's going to equal. Here we go. Go ahead and swap that out, right? So file named. So we're basically just, again, checking for GameScene, but plus TV, okay? So exactly that suffix that we added in there. And if it can make a variable out of that, which we're not really going to use, we're going to adjust full SKS name, and that's going to now equal our base SKS name plus TV. Okay, so we're going to do this for the iPad as well. In this case, we just change this to pad. And that'll be pad. That'll be pad. And I mean, if you wanted to do this for the iPhone, if you wanted to set up one that says, you know, GameScene phone, you could do that as well. But otherwise, we're basically just kind of defaulting to using the main one. But it is an option, right? Okay, so that would actually make it so that we would load up a device-dependent scene file, and then of course, you know, for these, you're going to want to change the dimensions. So you know, you might use, so what is this again? 2048 by, oops, I think that's 48 by 1536. What I prefer to do, and this kind of gets us into a whole other topic, but you know, basically the dimensions of your iPad are what, 1024 by 768. I like to go double that for the scene, and then that way, you know, one of the things you can do is you can just use 1x images, so you don't have to include in your Retina display images, because this whole scene is going to get shrunk down by 2. By a factor of 2, right? So, and essentially making all of your larger sized 1x images the 2x images, okay? Or you could do this, and then you could include in the 2x images, and then they essentially kind of become 3x images on higher devices. And it's all kind of relative, right? And then of course for your TV over here, well, 750 by 334 makes absolutely no sense. The TV only has 1x images, and the size is going to be 1920 by 1024, and nobody's turning their TV on the side, are they? Right? or in portrait mode. Somehow I lost there it is, a little tiny screen right now, but just because I'm zoomed out so far. There we go. So we'll save those, and then this could just, you know, stay as is. And let's, I guess we need to actually change to a different device to be able to properly test this out. Okay, paused it for a sec, fired it back up. Sure enough, we have iPad over there. I'm going to trust that the TV works as well. It is telling me that the base SKS name was never actually mutated, and they are absolutely right about that. So go ahead and change that over there to a let. And then, you know, our code shouldn't need much adjustment based on essentially just the layout of your items in there, you know. So let's suppose you're, you know, going to change the value of that label in there. Okay, just the fact that you're using a different, you know, positioning for these things, you know, isn't going to change that. You know, if we want to change this hello label, you know, .text property to something different, that's not going to matter. I mean, and one of the reasons it's not is because if you're going to do something like this, you're going to make sure that all of your elements in here, you know, have the same name. So you wouldn't want to go and come over here and put in hello label pad, right? That would be stupid, okay? Because, you know, it should just be hello label, and then that way in your code, you just get to reference, you know, hello label, not hello label pad, right? But with that said, okay, if you wanted to put in here some changes based on the particular device, obviously you can go and you can you know, you can do write lines of code like this, you know, if whatever. And another thing you could do is you know, you could put in here a variable that's, you know, or let's put in here var has pad specific SKS file. Okay, so that could be a Boolean value. Let's put that to default that to false. Then let's go ahead and print this out. Okay, now that's going to either show up as 0 or a 1 because it's a bool value. But then what we want to do is we would go over here to our game view controller, and let's do this. Let's put in here var has pads. Okay, so again, set this to false, and inside of here, okay, this test, right, we would say has pad specific SKS file equals true, and then we want to come down here, and if you're going to do something like that, you'll notice that if we try to type in here scene and then has whatever blah blah, blah has specific has pad specific file, it's not going to that property is not going to show up, right? And the reason for that is because we have game scene. I mean, we have SKScene right here, which doesn't have that property. So we'd want to change this to game scene, okay? And then let's take a step back. We'll try to write this again. And scene dot has, there you go. Now has pad specific SKS file is going to equal that right there, okay? So, you know, if this was on the iPad, right, we've thus changed this to true now, so then this equals true, and then that's going to get passed into our scene, and then our scene, our game scene.swift file knows that that is true, and it's using a specific scene file. And let's just launch it, and we'll just make sure that that is working. Okay, oh, actually, I thought that was going to return a 0 or 1. It actually says true now. Okay, so hopefully you guys feel comfortable setting up your own device-specific scene files, and that'll do it. Be sure to download the Cartoon Smart TV app, and that is for the iPhone, iPad, and the Apple TV. And there's all the recent stuff that we record is always free, and then after a certain amount of time, we kind of lock it up for subscribers. But there's always tons of free material in there for game art tutorials, all sorts of fun stuff. But as you guys know, I teach a lot of the iOS stuff, so there's tons of that. All right, dream big, princess.